It's a dim night on the Russian coast, and Oleg is helping a gathering of bootleggers to take 1 ton of caviar on a little boat. The mariner hears him challenges reminding him his boat can convey 600 kilos and doesn't adjust his perspective in any event when Oleg offers him more cash. However, this isn't enough for Oleg to surrender. He claims to call his significant other, however, converses with the runner and advises him to say that freight is 600 kilos so the mariner will take it. The stunt works, and Oleg gets his ton of caviar stacked on the boat, yet they can't go excessively far. The boat and the freight gradually sink, and the men must choose the option to swim to the shore. At the point when the mariner requests to be paid for the harm to his boat, Oleg gives him his new and current vehicle, so he's left with the mariner's old flimsy vehicle and obligation of $1 million with the bootleggers. The following day, Oleg goes to see his sweetheart Sveta at the bank she works at to request a credit. However, she can't give it to him since he hasn't wrapped up paying the one he's now taken. Needing to help, Sveta offers another arrangement. They could ask her family for help since they own a house. Oleg hates this thought since he can't stand Sveta's family and would prefer not to see them once more. However, he's out of choices. They drive to her home where the entire family lives respectively. There's Sveta's dad, Boris, who likes to sing peculiar tunes and hasn't gone out in 5 years since he's a needed man. Her maternal granddad, Pavel, who wants to bite the dust as of now. Her sister Rita, who fills in as a bookkeeper at the theater, however wishes to be an entertainer. Her sibling Tolik, who needs to enlist in the military yet can't due to his asthma and preferences preparing canines, and her sister Sasha, a little kid that continues fantasizing about turning into a developed lady and has eyes for her Sveta's sweetheart. Oleg attempts to converse with Boris about his cash issue, for which he needs to hold on until he's finished singing. At the point when Boris at long last hears what he needs to say, he blows a gasket, thinking selling the house resembles offering his family into subjugation. Oleg attempts to make sense of for them that no one will lose anything. He simply needs an underwriter's letter, yet at the saying it's silly. Boris' response is still no. Out of nowhere, their contention is interfered with when a shooting star gets through the rooftop and terrains in the house and hitting Pavel. From the get-go, the family runs outside, figuring they might be enduring an onslaught. However, when they see a shooting star shower overhead, they grasp what's happening and return inside to keep an eye on their granddad. In the wake of taking him to bed, Oleg and the kin begin digging to take the shooting star out to sell it. However, individually, the kin fall asleep and let Oleg digging be. He doesn't complete until morning, and when he emerges from the opening, he finds Pavel calling him from bed to let him know he's going to pass on. Oleg needs to call a rescue vehicle, yet Pavel disallows it. He's lived adequately long and needs to leave this world in harmony. Prior to dying, he gives Oleg one final back rub to give to his loved ones. They can all get lost. In the wake of actually looking at Pavel's heartbeat to be certain it's genuine, Oleg races to Sveta to give her the news, yet she's profoundly snoozing and won't focus. Oleg winds up nodding off close to her, and when Tolik comes later to show him something, Sveta is gone. Oleg follows Tolik to the front room and finds the shooting star has changed into a weird fluid. Sasha has acquired super strength and Rita can fly. Sveta appears a second after the fact, showing up with a portion of her body undetectable, and Pavel out of nowhere goes along with them too, fit as a fiddle. However, when Rita had no control over her new capacity and takes off through the opening on the rooftop, she rapidly tumbles to the ground, and Pavel dies again as Sveta comes completely apparent. After they help Rita back inside and tie her up so she can't drift away once more, making Pavel stir, they arrive at the resolution that the shooting star has given them extraordinary abilities. Sveta figures they ought to call the specialists, and when she leaves the room, Pavel kicks the bucket once more, and Rita quits drifting. It appears to be these unique capacities possibly work assuming they're all together. They go to see a specialist to get some information about it. However, the specialist says they're sound and there isn't anything amiss with their bodies. This hindering impact they get when they separate must basically be important for how their powers work. Later during supper, they talk about how they ought to manage these powers. Rita needs to perform, yet Pavel figures individuals will probe them in the event that they knew. While Tolik takes care of his canines and finds he can comprehend them now, Oleg lets Boris know that the family ought to show up on television and get compensated for it, yet Boris will not have his family utilized that way. At the point when they hit the hay, Oleg gets some information about the cash they keep in the bank while she contemplates whether she'll have imperceptible kids. The following morning, Pavel attempts to hang himself, however it's silly. For however long he is around his family, he'll remain alive. Boris finds his power as transportation when he goes to the washroom and makes a solid attempt to ease himself and chooses the family needs a little excursion to manage this. The gathering goes to a lake to fish, and keeping in mind that Boris figures out how to control this power, Oleg enlightens everybody regarding the arrangement he's concocted. They ought to cooperate to ransack a bank. With Sveta being imperceptible, she simply has to stroll and then leave with the sack of cash while everybody sits in the vehicle close by so she doesn't lose her capacity. Rita, Tolik, and Sasha are in. However, Boris keeps on turning down the thought, in any event, saying he couldn't care less on the off chance that Oleg leaves and they can't utilize their powers any longer. Furious, Oleg gets in the vehicle and Sveta follows him, subsequent to advising his family to place Pavel's body in the cellar until they return. Out and about, Oleg attempts to persuade Sveta his arrangement is really smart. However, they're out of nowhere made to pull over by another vehicle. It's the runners who need their cash. Oleg lets them know he could have it in a month, yet they can't acknowledge that. They'll pay them in a week or they will sell his organs in the Chinese underground market. After the dealers leave, Sveta at last comprehends that Oleg's obligation isn't just about the cash, it endangers his life as well, so she acknowledges to help him. The next day, 2 or 3 takes, Boris to see a magnificent new house that they could purchase in the event that they stick to the script. Boris doesn't think he wants another house, yet Sveta at long last goes to bat for herself and lets him know the family is tired of the old weak house and they will move any place with a working latrine. Boris actually denies, yet when Sveta begins crying and brings up she's requesting his assistance without precedent for her life, yet he will not pay attention to his little girl, Boris at long last surrenders and acknowledges to loot the bank. In the wake of talking about the subtleties of how they'll pull it off, the family commends the new life they'll have, and Sasha continues to intrude on Oleg and Sveta when they attempt to have some confidential time together. The following morning, she even sets some makeup on to intrigue him. Oleg is shocked when out of nowhere, all the relatives begin putting down conditions on the off chance that he maintains that them should team up. Pavel needs to be incinerated after the burglary is finished, Rita needs to fly before a crowd of people, and Sasha needs to have a date with him. Oleg believes they're requesting excessively and will not team up. However, Boris admonishes him and lets him know that to be important for the family, then, at that point, he'll help them consequently or the arrangement is finished, so Oleg must choose the option to satisfy everybody's desires. Subsequent to visiting the theater Rita works at and planning her show, Oleg at long last finds what his power is while in bed with Sveta. He can spill water out of his finger, which Sveta brings up is valuable for watering the plants. The next morning, Sasha joins the couple when they go check out the bank that will be their casualty. It's not the one she works at, so they can stay away from doubt. While they talk about the subtleties, Sasha asks what might occur assuming that Sveta was gotten and shipped off prison, pondering who might deal with Oleg. Entertained, Sveta cooperates and tells her she can make it happen. At the point when they get back, they figure out Tolik has shaved his head since he's at last been acknowledged in the military, and that implies he will not be accessible to ransack the bank. Boris is miserable that he'll lose his child. However, Oleg can't quit pondering the arrangement, so he makes some things happen among his contacts and gets the military to converse with Tolik and let him know it was every one of the Aslipa. Tolik is clearly incensed and resentful about this new development, yet Boris doesn't conceal how satisfied he is that the military has, as per him, seen the light. Oleg solaces Tolik, letting him know that after they burglarize the bank, he can converse with certain individuals he knows and get him it, acquiring Tolik's trust as he embraces him. Then, they go to a memorial service home to make the game plans for Pavel's incineration. The representative gives them a piece of paper that Pavel can adhere to his chest, so when the police think that he is dead, they'll be aware to take him there. Subsequently, Oleg takes Sasha out for lunch at an extravagant eatery while the family watches them from a remote place, and Sveta imperceptibly sits close to them to watch out for her sister. Sasha needs Oleg to take her with him after the burglary since she can't stand her family anymore, yet before Oleg can turn her down, they're intruded on by the dealers who are likewise eating there. They draw nearer to question Oleg, and when Sasha sees their miscreants, she stands up and makes sure to them up. The entire family begins taking off to remain generally safe, making Sasha lose her super strength, lastly abandon the bootleggers too. Afterward, the family goes through the late evening standing by listening to Tolik's canine sing the public hymn. The next day, it's at long last opportunity to execute the arrangement. Oleg leaves the vehicle across the road under the sun. In light of the fact that the shadowed backstreet, Boris focuses it has a no leaving sign. Since she can make her body undetectable yet not her garments, Sveta takes them off prior to strolling into the bank, imperceptible and stripped along with Oleg. She chases after the representatives to realize every one of the passwords and safe codes while Oleg snaps a photo of the floor map in the event that they need to escape. In the interim, Boris is burnt out on the sun and chooses to move the vehicle to the little rear entryway to get fresher air. This ends up being an issue. That region is just for the bank's shielded trunk to stop at, and when one of them shows up, they request that the family move away. Boris declines since it would cause Sveta to become a parent, so seeing they have no other choice, the watchmen utilize their own truck to drive the vehicle away. As Sveta shows up before a representative and a client that can't accept how the situation is playing out, the family calls Oleg, who surges outside and assists them with hauling Pavel's body to the front of the bank so they can be in every way nearer to Sveta once more. She quickly recuperates her powers and vanishes, so the two men that saw her think they were daydreaming. The family prepares to leave, yet is come by the police, who just need to mind them. Boris, be that as it may, believes he's a needed man and magically transports away, showing up inside the police's truck without significance to and getting captured for it. Hours after the fact, Oleg gets him out subsequent to losing one more vehicle as installment, and when they get back, he lets the family know that Boris isn't needed, all things considered, and it had all been his creative mind. Enraged, he hollers at everybody for getting into mischief and makes them guarantee there won't be any more contentions or abuse of their powers. The following day, however, they actually need to take Rita to the theater since it was essential for the arrangement. At the point when it's her chance to perform, she sees there's a major group, counting individuals she knows, and gets anxiety in front of large audiences. Rita flies out of the theater, not having any desire to perform any longer, and when Oleg pursues her, he's tracked down by the bootleggers, who take him to the stage and toss him around as they beat him up, making him the new demonstration of the day. At the point when they're at long last finished and let him go, Oleg is so furious and harmed that he affronts the entire family for the disappointments they continue experiencing, calling them languid, egotistical boneheads, able to do, involving the best innovation on the planet to simply scratch their backs. Oleg attempts to leave them, not needing anything more to do with him, yet Boris gets a thought and chooses to grab him. At the point when sun sets, the family returns to the bank, prepared to pull off the burglary. While Pavel occupies a few alcoholic men that are hanging out neighboring by drinking fuel and lighting, his breath ablaze, the remainder of the family covers their countenances and prepares to strike. Sasha pushes a truck before the road they are at to conceal what they're doing. Then, at that point, she pulls a chain Rita has placed on the window, opening in the wall. Then, at that point, Sveta utilizes the code she figured out how to handicap the caution, and Sasha basically gets the safe and tosses it out in the city. As the family begins taking the cash out and tossing it in the vehicle, the police show up. However, Talik keeps them occupied by sending the canines after them. When they have all the cash they could take, they get away from subsequent to getting Pavel, who abandons to fire him as he takes off. The sun is raised when they make far away from the bank to pause and celebrate. Pavel utilizes that second to help them to remember the last piece of the arrangement and requests that they leave him behind so he can at last bite the dust. After everybody says their farewells to him, the family drives away, yet they fly off the handle when they see Pavel's body fall dead and return to help him. Pavel doesn't acknowledge this and shouts at them, reminding them this is what he needs. Boris cuts in saying they should live respectively as a cheerful family. However, Oleg reminds him they can't, remain on the grounds that the arrangement they pulled off wasn't generally so smooth as the first, and the police will find them eventually. In addition, he and Sveta have proactively wanted to go to Thailand. Talik will be leaving for Moscow, and Sasha and Rita need to go to Brazil. The young ladies maintain that Boris should go with them. However, he lacks opportunity and willpower to answer on the grounds that Pavel lets them know he's known as the police so they can find his prospective dead body, so the family leaves for good this time. Seeing her granddad kick the bucket genuinely disturbs Sveta, who will not get the cash when Oleg begins separating it a few hours after the fact, saying they ought to give it back. Oleg rejects, so Sveta removes him from the vehicle, saying she doesn't have any desire to be with him any longer. Seeing as the family hasn't changed, all things considered, Oleg leaves and takes care of his business. He pays the dealers what he owed them, then conceals the remainder of the cash by taping it to his body under his garments. At the point when he goes to the air terminal prepared to leave the country, he sees on the news that the family has been captured for attempting to recuperate Pavel's body from the burial service home. From the outset, he makes an honest effort to overlook it, yet when he loads onto the plane, he can't manage the culpability any longer and gets back to town to help them. His most memorable stop is the memorial service home, where he attempts to pay off the worker to give him the body back. Seeing as there are thus many individuals frantic to have Pavel, the man requests 1 million and doesn't take some other of the lower sums Oleg attempts to haggle with. Since as he has no other decision, Oleg pays all the cash he has left and takes Pavel with him to the court where the family is being placed being investigated. When they step inside, everybody recuperates their powers and disarray follows. Boris magically transports out of the enclosure, and keeping in mind that he and Pavel fire-thumping individuals, Sasha breaks the enclosure to let her kin out. Together, they take out different officials while the other individuals take off, and presently they're completely rejoined. Boris acknowledges that this sort of insane arrangement authoritatively makes Oleg part of the family. Sitting tight outside for them, there's a gathering of equipped police, who Rita diverts by hovering above them, professing to be a strict ghost. This gives them sufficient opportunity to take a vehicle and drive away. However, the police before long wake up and begin pursuing them through the city. Boris magically transports within one of the squad cars to make them drive away. Sasha pushes others with her super strength, and when they inadvertently pass through a vegetable stand and the mirror gets grimy, Oleg cleans it with the water he pours from his finger. Sasha utilizes her solidarity again to assist the vehicle with making an unexpected turn, making all the police vehicles run into one another with the exception of, for one. They figure out how to at last lose it when Rita stands up and pushes up the vehicle as she flies up, making the vehicle float away with her. In a little while, the family meets with the runners and pays them to conceal them in one of their compartments so they can disappear to Thailand undetected. Presently, they have 20 days in front of where their main organization will be one another.